Welcome to Simply Stogies. I am one of your hosts, James. Tonight, we've got a great guest. If you read the show description or you've looked at the thumbnail on YouTube or Rumble, you know that we've got Vlada Stojanov of SOMM Cigars, a great friend of the show. I've known Vlada for a number of years. I think I've known Vlada probably the longest out of anybody in the cigar industry. I knew him before I started all of this happy horse shit that you see before you. But we've also got a great co-host tonight. Nick is on assignment in Costa Rica doing things for LH Cigars, which is certainly infinitely more important than doing things for Simply Stogies. So we'll see Nick, and I think we'll see Nick next week on the Clear the Air where we talk about Vlada behind his back. But before we introduce Tim and we get Vlada on the show, we get the show going, I need to remind you guys that this episode of Simply Stogies podcast is brought to you by smallbatchcigar.com. Smallbatchcigar.com. Use coupon code Stogies, get 10% off, always free shipping, and you're going to get a bonus 5% reward points. Now, look, all last year we talked about the reward points. Bank them. Your spouse is going to fuck up your birthday. They're going to fuck up your anniversary. You're not going to get the cigars you want. Bank your reward points and then buy yourself something nice at the end of the year. But you know what? It's tax season. We're in the middle of February, and it's tax season. And so this is what I'm going to tell you to do. I have never been the most financially responsible individual that's ever lived. So my non-advice to you, I am not a money guy. This is not legal financial advice. In fact, this is terrible advice, but you need to take it. You need to use your tax refund and go to smallbatchcigar.com. Go there and use coupon code Stogies. Get 10% off. Get what you want now. Get it now. Get it now. You know what? And you're going to get that double, that bonus 5% reward point, essentially doubling your reward points. You're going to get always free shipping. And then guess what? Now you're set. You've used that tax refund, just like we did during COVID with the stimulus checks they would send us. And we're like, oh man, they sent us like whatever, like $1,500, $1,600. Guess what? I got $2,000 worth of cigars just sitting in the cart there at Small Batch. I'm going to go ahead and buy it. Do it now while you're thinking about it. Look, there are tax places, guys, that will give you an advance on your refund. Go there, get it if you haven't filed your taxes yet. Go to smallbatchcigar.com. Use coupon code Stogies, 10% off. Get what you want now, and then also bank those reward points and get it later in the year. Christmas time, Thanksgiving, get what you want. Smallbatchcigar.com. This episode of Simply Stogies podcast is also brought to you by the Holy Coley, Lure Cigars and the Holy Coley. Guys, the Holy Coley is a Nicaraguan puro that is absolutely fantastic. If you have never had the Lure brand, this Habano with the Nicaraguan wrapper, the Nicaraguan binder, and the Nicaraguan filler, very medium profile, this is the way to go. The Holy Coley is a 5x50 Robusto, and it's absolutely a beautiful, beautiful cigar to smoke. You can see right there on the picture there where those it's got a little Ometepe in it. It's one of those cigars. Even if you're not a fan of Habano, which I'm not really a huge fan of Habano, but this Holy Coley, it'll set you straight in that 5x50 Robusto. Or you can get the Tagliali if you want something a little longer in the Toro. But that Holy Coley, named for one of his children, as a lot of his cigars are. Lure Cigars, smoke great cigars. Telltale Tales, Lure Cigars. If your B&M doesn't carry Lure Cigars, go to lurecigar.com and go to the About Us page, I think is where it's at. And it'll give a list of B&Ms and online retailers that carry it. Lure Cigars, smoke great cigars, Telltale Tales. Yeah, that's it. Maybe I should bring Tim in now. Or he can bring himself in. He's technically producing this. Tim, you can.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Good, buddy.
I let myself in, and I must say that was some of the best financial advice I have heard in a long time.
Yeah, we're gonna get sued. I think we're gonna get sued.
Somebody's not gonna like it. Yeah,
don't sue us. We don't have a lot of money. Don't do it. Tim, how you doing, buddy? Like, it's good to see you sitting in for Nick. I appreciate it.
These are going to be some hard shoes to fill, so I'm going to do my best. Please don't send the hate mail. I don't need it. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to listen to the conversation. I'm going to try to conjure up some questions and try to help you out, buddy.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm going to put you right there front and center. Guys, when you want to complain about Tim and the things he says, send an email to tim@simplystogies.com or info@simplystogies.com. Either way, we'll see it. And then it's all his fault. I really appreciate it, guys. Let us know how much Tim is absolutely terrible at this tonight. I really want to know. Before we get to the cigars and what we're smoking, I want to bring in our guest. Now, again, I've known Vlada since I've been smoking cigars. There was a club, it's a very similar name to what we have here that I was a part of once upon a time. And he just happened to be a part of that club. And he's always given me great advice. We've had him on the show before. Vlada Stojanov of SOMM Cigars. My friend, welcome back to the show. Oh, I think you're muted, my friend.
Yep, I think so. We have that problem.
A classic Zoom or Teams mistake. Yeah. Thank you for that generous intro. And you're right. I think this was 5+ years ago. Everything pre-COVID.
It was definitely pre-COVID. I think so. We started the show in 2019. This is our 6th year. I've known you since at least 2018. So
yeah, that's right.
7 years. Yeah,
that's right.
And you've always been one to really help out with tasting notes and kind of how to review a cigar. You are a sommelier. You're a trained sommelier. So you definitely have that palate. You know what's going on. And there's a lot of things going on in your life right now. I can't wait to talk about it and talk about all the great things that's been going on. But before we do, let's light a cigar. Now, I don't think, Vlada, you're not smoking tonight because you're in Vegas, and typically Vegas is pretty warm. But
Vegas is usually so easy when it comes to enjoying a cigar. You can enjoy it almost year round. In fact, I remember last year around January 9th or 10th, right? There was this polar vortex happening. Texted a friend of mine who was, I want to say, Wisconsin. And he goes, yeah, it's a little nippy over here. And it's like, 7 degrees or whatever it was. Meanwhile, I just texted him a picture back of standing in flip-flops in shorts, grilling on the patio. January 10th, where it's like 65, 70 degrees, nice enough.
I think they call that karma. I think they call that karma. I mean, it's cold there. It's like 32. It's definitely freezing here. It's we're like let people in on that. It's middle of Januay is when we're
I think it's like 10 degrees here or something like that.
Yeah, it's like 7.
It's cold.
That's the one thing I don't miss.
No, I bet. I was like, I wonder when he's coming to Chicago again. I'm like, probably not till it's warm.
I've made 2 cardinal mistakes when traveling. One was doing Chicago in like late November, just after Thanksgiving. And surprisingly enough, it was beautiful, super sunny, right? Did the touristy thing, got the architectural tour. And then the moment that sun went down, it just like 20-degree difference right off the bat.
Oh yeah.
And then the second travel mistake would be visiting Houston in late August.
Oh yeah. No, like those are 2, like it's like going to Vegas in July.
Exactly.
There's just some things you don't go certain places during certain times of the year. So before I ask everybody what they're smoking except Vlada, because cold,
I can show off what I was thinking about for tonight.
Yeah, we'll do that here in just a second. But before we can smoke, we have to clip our cigar. And you can't clip my wings, but you can clip my cigar. Well, that long thing. This is amazing on Tim's part. Can't clip my wings, but you can clip my cigar. Brought to you by Black Cigar Company. My God, we're off and running.
That's great.
This cigar clip is brought to you by the Crow Box Press from Blackbird Cigars. This is a San Andreas wrapper over Dominican Republic binder and filler. This is absolutely a group that elevates the 4 distinct grade A filler tobaccos: Nicaragua, Pennsylvania, Corojo, Criollo 98, with a Habano binder and a sweet and spicy Mexican San Andreas Maduro wrapper. An excellent evening smoke. The Crow entices the palate with notes of dark chocolate, espresso, and woodsy spice with a creamy finish. I absolutely love it. It's a great cigar. If you haven't been able to try the Crow box press, go out there, get it today. Again, if your B&M doesn't carry it, they don't carry Blackbird cigars, ask for it by name. Blackbird cigars. Can't clip my wings, but you can clip my cigar. And so now that we're done trying to play the wrong things, Tim.
Yeah.
Like, again, send your complaints to info@simplystogies.com. And if you'd like to apply for the job of producer and sometimes co-host and host of Clear the Air, please, again, send an email to info@simplystogies.com. And I'll take a look at your resume and we'll go from there. Tim, we'll start with you because I know that you are for sure smoking, and then I'll go with what I'm smoking. We'll ask Vlad what he was going to smoke. Tim,
I'll be honest with you. We've had this issue lately where things come up last minute and we're scrounging around trying to find cigars. We talk about this on the last Clear the Air. And I had to grab something real quick. So I went with a Crowned Heads, and I wish I could tell you which one it is because I grabbed it and that's what I have. But I got to get this lit. James, what are you smoking?
That's a phenomenal story. Thanks again. You're really channeling your inner Nick by not smoking what the guest produces. I appreciate that, and I'm sure Nick will too when he watches this, because Nick will be back, I think, for the Clear the Air. I am smoking the SOMM BDX Toro Box Press, a Blanc. This is I got a 5-pack of this from Small Batch. I ordered it. I paid for it. Just FYI, just for those out there who think we don't. I do pay for it. And I knew that Vlada was coming on, and so I didn't want to smoke these, and I've got like one or two left. So these are really good. Vlada, you're muted again, but these are really good. Tell me what you were going to smoke tonight, if you could smoke, if it was warmer outside, and then let's talk about this.
One was going the limited route, which is the last Rioja Lancero that I have. So this was released about a month ago in December. And there's plenty of stories where people are like, oh my God, I smoke this, or it's the factory's favorite or whatever. But this really was just made for me. So I made about 1,000 of them because that's like the minimum we could do in one run that made sense. And I've just given it out to friends and family, events that I went to, and, shop owners, friends, regulars that were just kind of like, hey, here's something cool. And people started bugging me, when are you going to release this? When are you going to release this? And I just kept saying never. And then one of the shop owners, the regulars literally came out with pitchforks, and they're like, hey, there's like 6 or 7 of us that want to buy this. Like, get on Vlad, get him to release this. So then it brings me to a question. I can't release it to a single shop when I've given it to about 10, 12 people, or 10, 12 different shops that we did at events. So we ended up releasing, a couple of 100 cigars essentially to friends and family. So essentially every shop got, a couple of bundles. And even when you look at that list, it really is just a very, very small amount of shops. Again, never meant to be like an actual commercial release, just for friends and family.
Yeah, no, you'd sent the press release out. I don't know, last month at the end of it was actually probably in November, October.
Maybe it was end of November too. Like I said, the first 2 months. Just
yeah, we'll talk about that. But I mean, I know you sent that press release out, and I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'll just wait for, Small Batch to get it. And I keep waiting. I'm like,
again,
oh no,
Small Batch got 2 bundles. Like, yeah, I wish they could.
They were gone.
Yeah, that was gone. I mean, most of these places just, I highlighted them in the press release, but we already kind of knew where they were going. So that was kind of funny. And plus there was a little bit of damage too from that small amount of cigars. So
do you find that happens like when it's a smaller number of cigars that you're producing? I mean, even if it's a low percentage, when it's 1,000 cigars you're producing, let's say, right? Even 10% of that 1,000 that maybe have a little bit of damage on it, it's bigger impact for you, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And you're right. Especially if that happens. I mean, again, even if it's like 10%, that's massive on such a tiny amount. But that's okay. That just means I got to enjoy a couple of those. Since I've,
I'm
after
not
the
selling
Premier
those.
crew, I did the same thing. Rather than keep a bunch back for myself, I've just given it out to friends and family. Most of them sold, and it just vanished. And here I am sitting, 3-4 years later, where I'm like, I just wish I saved one box. I actually know where there's some left. So my dad has maybe had 3 in Europe. So next time I go, hopefully they're still around.
Nice. I really want to, we should really start this show off and say congratulations to you and your family. You added one to the population of the earth. You've got a beautiful baby girl, healthy, a little sick, a little under the weather, but everyone's healthy, everyone's happy, everyone's good. Like tell me, because look, when you first met me 7 years ago, like I was a brand new dad as well, and it's scary as shit because you just don't. You're like, I don't keep it alive. I don't know. Talk about that. How has it been? How's life been? What are some of the changes you've seen? How's everybody doing?
So everybody's doing great. We are getting used to it, right? As new parents, it's amazing. It was scary, like you mentioned, especially like the first week or two. They're so tiny. You're holding them. I know that one of the first pictures that I have is I'm almost holding like a log, right? Just freshly cut piece of wood. But then it's just the first time she smiles once they start cooing a little bit. She's now 3.5 months, a little over. So now she's becoming more aware. She's cooing. She can interact a little bit more. So that's been amazing. Plus actually getting sleep. One way or another is amazing. She's a healthy little girl. Her name is Petra. I'll see if she's still up or she's playing right now. She might do a guest appearance too.
Nice.
There you go.
She's got my hair. She does have a mullet growing up on the back, which is really good. We have committed to not, or let me rephrase that. I have committed to not shaving that off.
Okay.
My beautiful partner might have something to say about that.
Right, I was going to say she might step in and be like, "Yeah, no, not gonna happen." Yeah. Let me ask you, and this can kind of dovetail into the industry and your thought processes and things you go through in the industry every day. But like, has your way of thinking changed since you've had Petra? Like, is it
100%?
So how has that impacted? I mean, because everybody's has, right? You have a kid, like your whole world changes, and there's this paradigm shift where it's like it's not just about me, and it's not just about my partner. It's like we have to keep this thing alive, and we 100%. Not only that, but we have to teach it, and we have to make it a contributing member of society, and we have to. So there's all of these thoughts and fears and hopes and dreams and nightmares that every parent goes through. How has that affected, you in the industry? Like, has it changed your outlook on things as it pertains to, SOMM, as it pertains to the industry?
Yeah. I mean, everything in general, you're right. There is a paradigm shift, and you just go, okay, I'm no longer just responsible for myself or maybe another person. Like there's a much bigger sphere of influence and responsibility now. And for those who, you can talk about it, but until you experience it, you just don't understand. And the closest comparison I can make in terms of impact is for everybody who doesn't have a kid, think COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID. That's like the closest difference I can explain in terms of like impact and how things change. Not dramatic or in a bad way, just from your overall take. And it's scary, right? A lot of these things you're experiencing them for the first time. So, am I doing this right? Is it, the third time you do it, it's easier, but then when you do the 30th time, it's a lot easier. And then ultimately the kids are going to be like little sponges, because that's what I'm thinking about as well further down the line, right? Once they grow up a little bit, once they can mimic and learn from you, I want to make sure that they're learning the right things, and I'm setting up the same values, basically make a better version of the two of us, essentially.
Yeah. Right. You want them to get like the best of you and the best of her.
Yep.
And hopefully kind of filter out all the bad shit that we do.
Yep.
Right. That's the goal. Like, but
that's the goal, right?
Yeah. Like, it doesn't always work like that.
Or like, your parents or the generation before that, there's not a lot of debugging going around, but like maybe there's just like extra code being put in without maintenance of that old code. So maybe we can do something about it and like upgrade it a little bit.
Maybe I always worry that I fail. I swear like a sailor. She hears it all the time. Like, those are daddy words though. Like you don't say daddy words, so there's that. I'm sure my kid's going to swear like a sailor at some point. She loves I love heavy metal music. She loves heavy metal music, but she woke up one day. And this is, trust me, guys, this is going into a question. But she woke up one day, and she wanted to play a song, and she played this heavy metal song first thing in the morning. And my wife's like, "Where have you heard this song?" And she's like, "Oh, it's one of Dad's songs." And then she played like a Disney princess song, like right immediately after. And I say that to ask this. Like how, because that made me very proud as a heavy metal father. It made me very proud. How upset are you going to be when your daughter doesn't inherit your palate and she's just like, I want nuggets and fucking
She's
ketchup?
Be fantastic, I think. I'm a big believer. So when it comes to palate development and just how adventurous you are as an eater, it's a muscle. It's no different than going to the gym, no different than reading books. It's just something that you practice. Overall, a lot of it is biological, right? Especially when you're younger, you're going to crave that easy, cheap way of transforming energy, which is primarily going to be sweet stuff, and that's just easy. Now, obviously, there's so much processed stuff that has a ton of sugar, so it's readily available, right? You think about candies and chocolates and all the other stuff that's like easy to get hooked onto, and then as your palate evolves, up until probably about 25, 30, you have all the basic tastes, right? Like so your sweet, your sour, your acidity, etc. The only taste profile that is actually learned is bitter. So you won't develop appreciation for bitter things until your late 20s, early 30s. And it's the only one we actually have to learn. And if you think about it, right? 200,000 years ago, we didn't need to figure out if this was grapefruit or lime or lemon or whatever else. We needed to figure out if this is going to kill us or not, whatever we're going to eat whatever we're going to eat right now. And typically bitterness either shows danger, right? It can be poison, it can be underripe, something can be off, it can be spoiled. So it's kind of this natural way of protecting you from a flavor standpoint. So we essentially have to go against our nature and say, yep, now I'm going to start drinking Amaro, and I'm going to start drinking Negronis, and I'm going to enjoy these bitter foods and everything else. So that's quite an interesting thing. The other part is there's a difference that I should probably explain before we start nerding out and diving deeper. So when it comes to what we consider taste and flavor, there's two different pieces. One is going to be your perception in the mouth. And when we say perception in the mouth, you really perceive flavors by the gases and the flavor compounds and the molecules going up your retronasal passage, up to here. Then your brain essentially going, okay, this reminds us of X. And what your brain really does is it takes these chemical impulses and goes for a Rolodex and makes stuff up. And it's insane. I know that it sounds like this is not how it should be, but typically we're actually not smelling anything. Our brain is interpreting these things and saying, yeah, this kind of smells like that. Our brain essentially does pattern recognition and say, okay, these particular compounds remind me of apples. These particular things remind me of lemons. This reminds me of something else. But your brain essentially makes stuff up as you go.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
let me ask this question real quick before you continue, because that makes sense to me. I've seen people put headphones on and they'll play sounds and like environmental sounds, and they'll be like, oh, I can smell the ocean, right? Like they're hearing the ocean, I can smell the ocean, that kind of thing. And your brain does matrix it and find patterns where there's not patterns. But does that mean then that there's no objective flavors?
Oh, not necessarily.
Or is it just all experiential?
Like if we are talking about objective, right? You put it from a mass spectrographer, for example, and like, hey, this is right. This is the chemical composition of the smell of grapefruit, for example. Yeah, that's objective, right? But especially when we're doing, let's call it joint tastings, typically you'll have a consensus where if we're all smelling a wine, for example, and then out of the 7 of us, 6 of us says it smells like grapefruit, but one person is adamant that, it smells like a lime, for example, it could be that all 6 of us are off, or it could be that they're just perceiving it differently. So yes, there is an objective, this particular flavor composition, these particular chemicals are responsible for this smell, right? That's what we're talking objectively.
Yeah.
And then from a subjective standpoint, your experience drives not only your experience, but your cultural upbringing, language. That's an important one. And it's very interesting because English, and this sounds like I'm harping on English as a language, but I'm really not, is relatively poor when it comes to describing flavors, smells, and textures compared to something like Japanese, for example, where you have multiple variations on textures. You have an extra 3 or 4 textures that we just don't recognize. Even, how do we really translate umami? The best translation is like savory-ish.
Yeah.
In most cases, it's just translated as umami. Similar to how you're trying to translate terroir. Terroir is a combination of, when you say terroir in French, you know what you mean. You mean the all-encompassing sense of place where you have the geology of the place, whatever's planted on there, the climate, the people, the history, blah, 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 blah. But there's no direct translation in English, so you have to kind of make it up as you go and provide all these explanations. So similar to your tasting, when you grew up somewhere and have continuously tried different things, your perception might not be the same, even though you might be smelling the same thing. I think I've shared this story before about lychee and white grapes. I grew up in Serbia, and lychee is not a traditional Serbian fruit. So we're smelling this ripe New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc, or one of the, either New Zealand or Australian, I forget. And one of the tasting notes that keep popping up is like lychee, 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 or lychee. Both are acceptable as pronunciations. So lychee, lychee, lychee. And I'm like, okay, cool. At one point, I'm going to actually smell this and figure out what it is. So 2010, I ended up in San Francisco after finishing my internship. And I'm walking by somewhere around the piers or the wharf, somewhere out there. There was like an open air market. And I see like canned lychees. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally going to buy this. So I buy it, right? Go to the side, crack open the can, smell it. And I go, bullshit. This smells like white musket grapes. And I've had white musket grapes so much, right? So your classical table grape, you can make obviously wine out of the musket grapes, but typically they're eaten as table grapes. So they're super aromatic. There's quite a bit of sugar to them. They're typically very floral, very, very fragrant. And I literally smelled it and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what this is. But just from a cultural difference, I didn't know that that's essentially what lychee is. So even today, when I smell it, I'm like, oh, okay, like lightly floral, plus obviously the little bit of syrup. And like that's a good example of just cultural differences. So we would be essentially, if I've never had lychee before and you're familiar with it, let's say you cook with it or you grew up eating it, your first point would be like lychee. And I might go, okay, white musket grapes, right? Floral, this is where we're going. So technically we're both correct. Objectively, there's very clear similarities between the two.
Yeah.
So who's wrong there? Or is it the perception?
Yeah, I guess that's really the question that I have when it comes to tasting notes and trying to figure it out. You use the word terroir. What was
Terroir.
it?
So terroir is essentially the it's a wine term that was co-opted by cigars and then a bunch of other things.
Right, but you said that it means it's like this all-encompassing term that doesn't just mean that what you're tasting, but it's that you're tasting the land that it came from and the people that worked with it, and it's like this all-encompassing experience that sounds very esoteric, ethereal,
It is
spiritual.
it's complete.
Yeah, so
You know,
you know, yeah. So part of me is like, well, that's just a bullshit word the French made up
I
to be
love
like,
it.
you know, that you taste everything, because objectively you're not tasting everything, right? You're not.
You're
There's
right.
no. You're not tasting the 200, 300 hands or whatever it is that they say like made this cigar. You're not tasting that. You're tasting the minerals from the soil, right? I think that contributes to how things taste in a cigar. How it's blended, how the leaves are put together. You're tasting, you know, how the sunlight impacted it. You're not exactly tasting the sunlight. You're not exactly tasting the earth. You're tasting the impacts that those things had on it. So it's hard. And look, we review cigars here. And it's hard for me sometimes to parse that personal bias out of it and go, you know, I heard somebody recently say, you know, they smoked a cigar and they got Welch's grape jelly out of it. And I'm like, that's a very specific taste to get from a cigar. Welch's grape jelly.
Hey, Concord grapes, my man.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I get it. And that's just it. You might get this floral, fruity, sweet kind of note, maybe on a retrohale or on the finish, right? And then your brain goes, Matrix is that, finds a pattern where there's not a pattern and goes, Welch's grape jelly. Like it makes that connection for you. So I feel like, do you think that reviewers, cigar reviewers and food reviewers and wine reviewers deserve a little bit of grace when it comes to how they, I don't want to say embellish, but how they kind of make the review interesting for people to read?
100%. You're right. And yeah, there definitely is a portion of that paint me a word picture, because you really do. If I say, you know, smells like grape jelly, that doesn't really. But if I go, smells like PB&J for your second grade school lunch, right, when you were sat next to your crush, like that changes it a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a little bit of that. And okay, now we're going to go on the romantic side of things. Right?
Do it. Go.
Look,
Go there, brother.
Ultimately, we light that cigar up and it's a bundle of leaves. But going back to the terroir, it's an all-encompassing sense of place. So when you do light it up, you're essentially lighting it on fire, right? So you're destroying it. But the fact that a good cigar can do this, they can literally grab you by the hand and take you wherever it was made, wherever it was grown, and say, hey, check this out. This is the valley that I was grown in. Here's the cloud cover that was provided there. This is where I sat for 3 years. This is where I was rolled. This is where I sat. And this is where you picked it up from your favorite retailer. Or maybe you ordered it from small batch, right? So there is a piece of magic in this. No different. Wine does the same thing. And that's what really appeals to me with wine. It's one of the cheapest ways to travel if it's properly done. If it's not generic tasting, I've gotten to a point where, or especially when I was doing wine more and more, you could taste the individual different vineyards. And I always thought it was essentially bullshit, right? No different than terroir. I always, kind of put it aside and I'm like, whatever. So I wish I could remember what was the name of the winemaker, but I remember the two wines that were done side by side. Showed us the map, showed us the estates side by side, showed us a technical graph of everything, essentially. The only difference was this little tiny plot of land, right? A little white picket fence, and then Same grape, same everything, same soil, everything's the same. The wines taste completely different. The same yeast. Essentially, he tried to replicate the wines side by side, and he got two completely different wines. And I looked at it and I'm like, all right, this is, it's a good trick, but it isn't. It truly, I'm a big believer that, how you take care of things from start to finish will show up in there. Sense of, right, like care. If you spend the passion and the care from start to finish, from essentially seed all the way to someone actually lighting it on fire, you completed a cycle. It went from creation to destruction to creation. And that creation is your own memory.
Yeah.
And then I'll get off my,
no,
I think that was enough romance.
No, you're right. It is a very romantic, kind of thing. But I think I wanted to talk about that to ask you this. I think that was a very long setup for what I hope will be a pretty fruitful discussion when it comes to blending. Do you think your job coming up with these blends and coming up with because we'll talk about you use Cavalier's factory. You're good friends with Brian Matolo and Sebastian, and I've seen your I was gonna say TikToks, your Instagrams where you're down there. I don't. Do you have a TikTok? I have a TikTok. We barely use it.
I don't. Yeah. I'm not 12.
Yeah, I'm kind of 12. So
I know. No, I'm kidding. I've actually had. I personally have not had. I just never downloaded it. I just am not a big social media guy. I tried, but it just doesn't work.
It doesn't stick. I get it.
I spoke to a couple of brands that have done, or retailers actually, that have done really, really well on TikTok. They're not selling anything. It's just purely educational content. And some of them have like 100,000 followers, which for me, I was like, Jesus, that's
crazy. That takes a lot of work to get to that point though.
And
you have to be dedicated to it.
It took about, I think he said 9 to 12 months. And again, all they did, right, they have their in-house team, they're making stuff, and they're just doing things slowly and just a bunch of educational content. And I'm sure there's like algorithm plays to do and all that. I'd rather not.
I'd rather not.
I'd
rather not either. But I've seen you down there at the factory in Honduras, hanging out with Brian and some of the guys down there. And I think you were hanging out with the guys from Wildfire.
Jeremy. Yeah. Jeremy McDonald. I love Jeremy.
Yeah. So I've seen that, but do you think you have it harder as a trained sommelier? And you do have this view of tasting and these experiences. It is an experience. I think anytime you sit down for a meal, it's an experience. Anytime you sit down and you have a bottle of wine, it's an experience. You sit down, you have a cigar, it's an experience. And you want to really go on that journey personally with that cigar or that bottle of wine or the meal, whatever it is. Do you think you have it harder or easier because of being trained as a sommelier?
That's a great question. It could be both, right? It can be harder and easier depending on how you look at it. I'm aware of my blind spots. Let's call it palate blindness. And palate blindness is essentially what develops when you enjoy a certain thing and you kind of get used to it. And at that point, you kind of equate to what you're looking for specifically for that. So to kind of combat that palate blindness, I try to smoke everything under the sun. Now, my personal preference is that I don't enjoy full strength, meaning full nicotine strength, and then pepper bombs. That's just not my profile. That's not something I enjoy. That's not something that I've blended or have in the existing portfolio. And every time I've done about 6 different blends at this point, and none of them meet my criteria of what I consider excellent or excellence. So the real moment there is it palate blindness on my end? Is this something that I'm just ignorant about? Do I need to sit down and smoke nothing but full strength cigars that are massive pepper bombs for the next month until I figure out where I'm going wrong? Because I went through the entire, I went through the rejection list for all of those blends, and I wrote more or less the same thing: lacks finesse, lacks refinement. And that could be just the harder part of it.
Have you ever smoked a pepper bomb? And this isn't like a sarcastic question. Like I really want to know, have you ever smoked a pepper bomb or a full strength cigar that didn't lack finesse?
Rarely. There are some out there. That are big pepper forward, just big brash. It's a 6'4" linebacker that's doing acrobatics.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's a very good analogy,
right? Like he's in a leotard and a tutu, but like the man's 250 pounds.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, you walk a fine line with those cigars, and I've had a couple that have that finesse, that have that je ne sais quoi, that certain something, right, where you're just like, man, this isn't overwhelming my senses like it normally would, like something like a cigar with these tobaccos in it normally would. And it like, but as a sommelier, I would think like that would be easy for you to be like, I can make the finish this, and I can round the harsh edges here, and I can do this. Because I guess I kind of look at it as like a chef or a painter. Anyone who expresses, it's an expression of yourself. I would think that would be easy, but you're telling me like it's not.
So that's where the experience comes in, right? If I've smoked enough of those and have just gotten to a point where I don't think I am getting it to the same level as the rest of the blends. But I could be wrong, because the people that I've given them to absolutely love them. And
do you trust their palates?
I do. But again, this is something that I'm going to probably go back and just iterate until like I'm happy with it. But in the meantime, one of the projects that kind of happened from that was we ran into this 14. Well, ran into this. So one of the options, one of the questions that I always ask is, what do you have that's old, that's rare, that's unique? And there's this 14-year-old wrapper that there's very little. There's a couple of thousand cigars. So similar to the Premier Cru in terms of production numbers. So maybe, a couple of thousand cigars. The problem is, and Nick, when he's back, he can provide more info on this. Whenever you get the wrapper, there's always stuff that just can't be used, that might not look nice or might have holes or whatever. It has to be used for the binder. So what I'm going to do is, on that particular blend, I'm going to make one that's with the 14-year wrapper outside, and then stuff that has to be used as a binder, I'm simply going to invert it. And I already have the names. It's going to be after wine, of course. So it's going to be after a varietal that's grown in France, and then the rest of the world, but it's just called differently. I think it'll be a nice little play.
Oh, nice.
And then I'm going to go back and build something that's going to be full flavored and full flavor and full strength, and the just big brash. It's not something that I usually go to, so I need to enjoy a lot more of those. I think here I don't mind mentioning other brands, especially stuff that I admire. I think the Maestranza from that whole line is absolutely incredible. It's probably one of my favorite. Those full strength, and even then, I wouldn't put that as full strength.
No, but it has elements of it. It's one of those cigars that it made our top 10 for 24, and it blew me away the first time I smoked it, and I was like, I had to smoke another one like right afterwards, because I'm like, this had to be a fluke. And I'm like, I'm not I enjoy Roma Craft, right? I enjoy it, but it's not something that I'm always seeking out, because it is typically a little full, it's a little, and I like you, I don't like pepper bombs, but man, like there were no harsh edges on it. The finish was fantastic. Like it was really a great cigar, and one of the best that came out last year. So I mean, I was happy to see it fall at number 7 for us. It really was. I'm glad you said that, because I was like thinking, maybe it's just me, but
that's where I want to go. But that's where I want to go, and like all the stuff that I've kind of it brushes against it, but it's not that level. And I'm like, it's going to take a lot of iteration until I get to something that I'm happy with. Meanwhile, for the rest of the stuff that's not full strength, full pepper bomb, etc., I think I have a good handle on it. I don't think I'll be expanding to more lines. I might keep doing the limited production sizes or the limited production blends for a couple of reasons. I admire Mo, for example, from Patina. I don't know if you guys had him on here.
Oh yeah, we've had him on a couple times. Actually, again, talking about the cigar, he got our cigar of the year last year for the Oro de Nicaragua.
His Oro line is amazing. Yeah. I love Mo. He's such a great guy, and I admire what he did. Right, he's now a decade in. Right, is that?
Yeah.
So he's had 3 lines up until maybe 4.
Let's see. He had the Connecticut, right? That was what he started with.
Yep.
And then he had the Maduro, and then the Sumatra.
Yep.
So yeah, 3. I think you're right. I think 3. And that Sumatra is relatively new. It's only a couple of years old. And then he added the Oro.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
And look at it's very specific. He knows what he's doing. And I'm like, great. I don't want to have, plus I think from a retailer perspective, I have 7 regular production SKUs, right? All very, very classic sizes. And then for those who, want your Corona Gordas, which speaking of Corona Gordas, actually, when I visited Small Batch last week, I managed to get their exclusive, which is the little Corona Gorda in the BDX Blanc format, BDX Blanc blend. Oro Lancero, something that I personally enjoy from a format perspective, but may not necessarily be such a massive seller from a retailer perspective.
Well,
so with that, go ahead.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going to. I always judge, and I've said this many times on the show. I always judge a cigar manufacturer by their Connecticut. If they can make a good Connecticut, something that is in that mild to medium, maybe medium plus at the high end, that just is a beautiful blend that has the balance of earth and sweet, and it's not just cardboard, right? And there's the little bit of oomph that they can give it, to kind of take it to that next level. And for me, your Blanc line, and you shared it with us at the trade show last year in Vegas, and I smoked. I was like, Jesus, fuck, this is really good. And so when I ordered this box press from Small Batch, I was like, oh yeah, no, this is going to be it's going to be this. No, it's different than what I smoked in Vegas, just enough where I'm like, man, like there's some nuance to this and some complexity that goes beyond what the original blend does. And so, like I said, when I judge a blender, a company, what I don't even want to phrase it, on Connecticut, like you're nailing it, buddy. Like you're nailing it.
I agree with you that it's probably, at least I think it's probably one of the more difficult things is to blend a full flavored cigar that's light or light to medium at the same time. I think the Blanc does that. And the one that you're smoking is, it's a great story. So if you go back, I don't know, sometime back on my profile, you can actually see that there's 2 cigars. One has number 1 and one has number 2. One is a box pressed pyramid almost shape with a tapered head. And then the other one is just a regular round cigar, if I remember right. So the blend that you're smoking is what I essentially really, really, really loved. However, it pushed the body from that light to medium, from a light cigar to a light to medium, maybe even medium once you get down to that last third. And that's not what I really wanted to make. So the adjustment between that and the regular blend, there's a quarter leaf less of Dominican Piloto Cubano, and then the format is different. The format changes it quite a bit. Now, and I'm going to blame my Spanish for this. When we were communicating, what I called box press, right, a prensado, is essentially what you ended up getting, but it should have been prensado pirámide, which is the actual like box press pyramid with tapered head. And that didn't quite kind of get across. but I also found out about it like 3+ months later. So it's okay. We made the original format as well, and that's been sitting for, I think it's going to be close to a year now. Yeah, they came back around the 15th last year. So around TP is when they were rolled, and they've been sitting back there. I think, again, another small amount, and that'll probably be a limited edition or a limited release this year. So it's really, really interesting, especially in that the Toro, the box press Toro. It does add a touch more strength, touch more body, without necessarily impacting the flavor, the balance of flavors, rather, the overall blend. And then the Robusto out of the two sizes, right? It's a 5.5 by 52, and then a 6.5 by 54. That was an interesting format choice. So you kind of touched upon this, that the Connecticut has to give you a little bit. It can't be boring. It can't be one dimensional.
Yeah.
So when we blended it right, like when I was there with Brian and smoking and testing stuff, I said, okay, I want that 6.5 by 54. That's the format out of the Toro ranges that work the best. I had them roll 10. Brian smoked 1, and I smoked 9 of them throughout the day. The last one was at like 11, mostly because I could have smoked one more. Just we got our asses kicked by 2 Cubans in Domino's. Very, very, we were like full gringo, absolutely got our asses kicked. So at that point, I said, okay, no more cigars. This is it. But at no point did I get bored. And I said, okay, there's something in this profile. This is it. The next step is we'll let them sit for 6 months and then release them. The other part with blending is I like to take blends. I like to take at least about 10 to 15 every time I go. Then once it hits 3 months, I'm going to smoke them at 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. And then once I figure out that they're ready, I'm going to pass them out to a couple of people whose palates I trust, and just to hear that feedback.
Let me ask you this about that. So you test them 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months to make sure that they're ready. When you say that they're ready, right? That's when you think like it's not going to get it's good enough to be released, right? This is where you want it, your vision.
You kind of hit it.
Because it's going to change, right? Over the next 3 to 6 to 9 months, right? Like it's going to change over time. So like as someone who's a cigar manufacturer, how do you determine when it's ready, knowing that it's good in 6 months after you release it's going to be different?
I like to compare blending, right? Like testing them when they're just rolled and ready to barrel tasting wine. You don't have an idea what it's going to be like a year from now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now. You only have a potential, right? Like what can it actually do? And then you kind of judge it, and you mostly, there's no objective way to judge it. Not that I know of anyway, but you kind of figure out, close your eyes and think, okay, this is what it's showing right now. This is the potential. Let's see if I'm right. So it's a gamble in a way. It's a calculated gamble, but it still is. One of the blends I really liked last year, and that I did, or the year before, actually, we're in 2025. So I got the Connecticut essentially like try number 4, and it was mostly like adjusting that, quarter here, half a leaf here, very, very small adjustments. But then once we were done with that, I spent about 3 days trying to get that vaunted, full strength for full flavor cigar. And in those trials and tribulations, I ended up getting a blend that I really liked and just wrote, hey, this is something that I really want to test out. So I made them and tried it at 3 months, absolutely fell in love with it. And I'm like, this is incredible. Tried it at 4 months. This is great. Tried it at 5 months. This is great. Tried it at 6 months. And I'm like, that's solid. And then I let it sit for a little bit because I had about 4 or 5 left. Just let them sit aside. And about 3 months later, so at 9 months, I tried it, and the dominant notes that were present on that, like the pepper forwardness and the spice that were kind of dominant in driving the profile faded. They were still present, but faded in the back. And it was closer. It was now driven more by San Andreas that was in there. So a lot more of that earthiness, the dark chocolate, the cacao, rather than straight up spice. It went from being chili forward to being chocolate and chili, then morphing into Mexican hot chocolate, which is not what I wanted. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Does the progression make sense where it went from a spicy chili to like, this is just kind of nice.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if that's not what you wanted, but you were still happy with it though, right? You're like, well,
yeah, no, it's
happy accident.
It's just not what I wanted to do. And then this Connecticut that you're enjoying, I loved it so much that I'm like, this is, I'll tell you guys offline what it reminded me of. And it's a cigar that I truly enjoy. I truly enjoy, and I consider it one of the best examples of new age, new style Connecticut's. The downside is, even in Vegas with like our 50 cents taxes, it's like almost $20.
Jeez, wow.
For a Corona Gorda, like it's I still love them and smoke them occasionally, but it's a.
You brought it up, not me. I'm going to talk about it because you brought it up. Cigar pricing.
Yeah,
I was going to try to get away from this in the new year, but I don't think we can. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here because I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get in trouble with everybody. With you know what I'm saying? Like with anybody. But cigar pricing is out of control. It's almost every year. Everyone's raising their prices. Everyone's raising their price, and I get it. I get it. It's recession. It's all kinds of economic driven, but at the same time. Is it?
So there's a very clear, I'll do shipping. Shipping is a good example. Even at my small numbers back in pre-COVID times, you'd pay about 8, maybe 10 cents for your air freight per cigar, right? Once COVID hit, getting around 20 to 22 was per cigar, right? Like you end up very, very lucky. And those prices have never really come down. Even now it's probably closer to, maybe 15, 16 cents a stick. I'd have to look at it the last time. I did luck out one of the times. I don't know how, but maybe it was a spot price that we were quoted and we ended up importing 35,000. Nick can vouch for like how insane of a deal that was. It was 30,000 cigars for I think $560. Something, yeah, wow. Like absolutely insane. But that was a complete fluke. Right, the price of tobacco has gone up. Price of labor has gone up. There was quite a bit of labor shortage happening, especially during COVID. And then ultimately, I would love to do a $9 cigar that actually makes sense. It's difficult if you don't own your own factory. Like it's just difficult. And someone like Nick or maybe Brian or Sebastian, when they're here, like they can talk more about the economics in depth. But for me, as someone who does not own a factory, it's extremely difficult to do under $10 cigar unless you got a really good deal. Like that's a different. Well,
yeah, but I mean, then you're dealing with,
or you want to buy subpar tobacco or things.
Subpar, like, right? I was just going to say,
which I'm not going to deal with. Like I'm assuming everybody's set out to make the best thing they can for the price point.
Yeah, especially when you're dealing with wrapper leaves. I mean, we've really talked this interview, this conversation about a lot of tasting notes and wine and how it kind of relates and food and all of that. And like you eat with your eyes first. And so if that wrapper isn't gorgeous, if it's not beautiful, you're not going to want it. Right. Unless it's something, right. Unless it's a gimmick like the Yagua, which is a great cigar. I'm not taking anything away from the Yagua. It's a great cigar, but it's meant to be ugly. It wasn't ever meant to be something that was out in production, if I remember the story right. Right. Like it was somebody's cigar. They're like, oh yeah, no, I like these. And they're like, oh shit, why aren't we releasing these? These are really good. Right? So you do eat with your eyes first. You smoke with your eyes first. And that kind of goes to the band and the marketing and all of that, but it really goes to that wrapper leaf.
And kind of something to just the way I look at it. What used to be the $8 to $12, which was essentially the most competitive price point a decade ago, right? 2015 through 2020, is now simply 12 to 15, and that's just inflation. That's really it. There's really no way around it.
So the day of the $10 cigar is over. Like, if you find a good budget cigar, like, congratulations, but they're few and far between now.
I mean, depends, right? If someone's making 100 or 300 or 500,000 cigars with a factory, they're going to get a better price than me who's doing 50, right? There's just economics. So am I saying you can't release an under $10 cigar? No, of course. Of course not. Of course you can do a under $10 cigar. That's going to be amazing. It's just difficult for small brands. For me, especially, I mean, and then you just got to look at it. Does it make sense to spend the money, spend the time, sit on it for 6 months before it's released? Or should I add a little bit more and, make an extra 10,000 Blanc Toros?
Yeah. And look, that makes sense economic wise, right? Like, if you have a factory, you own your own factory, and you can produce 500,000 cigars, like, you're going to get a better price. It's going to be a lot cheaper, and you might be able to produce that $10 to $12 cigar, or 8 to 10, like 8 to 12, wherever that was, a lot easier than what you would be able to, or Nick would be able to, or any other boutique brand out there, right? But when was the last time? And this is a rhetorical question because I don't want you to get in trouble with anybody, Vlada. When was the last time you saw one of these big manufacturers release a cigar that was $10 or under? That was fantastic. Like, I can't. I can't, unless you've got one off the top of your head.
No, I have a phenomenal right off the top of my head. The Corivari. I want to say it's Buenaventura's. I confuse all their lines, but all of them are great. They release something that's like $6.50, $7. That's really good.
Yeah, but they're boutique, aren't they?
I mean, I think they have their own boutique. I think they have their own factory. I know.
Does it really make that big of a diff? I mean, because they're not Arturo Fuente, they're not Rocky Patel, they're not STG or Altadas. They're not in every shop. And they're very good cigars. Corivari makes very good cigars. I've always loved their stuff, but I've always considered them boutique from, I guess, my definition. Yeah, like passion over profit. Like,
I think, I mean, we mentioned Romacraft earlier. I mean, they always aim to release the best cigar they can for the least amount of money possible.
The Mastranza is what, $11 for the Toro? Like, it's right in that sweet spot. I think the Robusto was $10 if I'm remembering right.
I think so. Yeah, maybe so $1 more, but yeah, it's in there.
It's right in there. So I guess people. I mean, you can't. Mastranza's amazing. Yeah. So I guess you can. But it is to your point. It is difficult to do. I look at the industry and I'm like, man, everyone's releasing a fucking $20 cigar or a $25 cigar. Or goddamn, a $300 cigar. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? What are we doing? Why? And then all the regular production lines start creeping up in price, and I'm going, it's like you're really trying to price people out of this fucking hobby and out of this industry. And I don't think it's done in a malicious kind of way. And you're probably right. I think a lot of it is economics driven and supply chain driven. I mean, logistics is a fucking nightmare in the industry still after COVID. My wife works in logistics, so I know how much of a fucking nightmare it is. And that's just US to Canada. So I can only imagine getting something from Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica to the US. It's a goddamn nightmare. Like, what do you lose sleep at night over? We're talking about nightmares. We're talking about this kind of like, and I don't mean with I hope Petra grows up to be this or that. I mean, like, cigar.
Oh, no, she mostly just screams when she's hungry in the night.
But what? Yeah. Besides her, what keeps you up at night?
I'll actually bring her in a sec.
Oh, yes.
There you go.
She's about to take a bath. Give me just a sec. Let me.
Yeah, no, go ahead. While you're doing that, I want to remind everybody. Look, it's what? It's February. It's actually January. TPE's done now by the time you're watching this. It's event season. With event season, you guys know what that means, right? Like, you guys know. May 9th and 10th this year. My Old Kentucky Herb, Ashland, Kentucky. Go to fatashcigar.com. Get your tickets now. Look, early bird tickets are going to go on sale, or are going to be available through the end of this month. $225. If you wait until after February, they're going to be $250. Look, they're doing a lot of great things, right? This is going to be automotive car themed. They have a pit pass now. They don't have VIP anymore. They have a pit pass for an extra $100. You're going to get all kinds of goodies, including you don't have to stand in line for your cigars. You can walk right in. You're going to get a goodie bag with all of your cigars, and you can go to the tables and buy when you need to. You're going to get preferred seating on both the 9th and the 10th of May. Look, we know that it's Mother's Day. We know that. It's Mother's Day weekend. But guys, My Old Kentucky Herb, this is the event. There's not another event that you should go to, but My Old Kentucky Herb, you should. fatashcigar.com. Get your tickets now, $225. Get that pit pass. Pick up the pit pass, all right? Because that's going to save you a lot of time on Friday and Saturday. And look, Friday night now, the registration party, which is famous. It is a famous registration party where you get to hang out with principals from all over the industry. They're going to have 20 plus vendors there, cigar vendors. You get to hang out with people from all over the industry. You don't want to miss it. Friday night starts at 5 o'clock at the convention center. It's going to be amazing. Fatash cigar, Fatash. Let me get that. Yeah, fatash.com. Fatash.com. Get your tickets now. Let's oh, there she is. There's Pat.
There she is.
Oh my
Hi,
God.
guys.
Hi.
She is ready. Plus, she's getting hiccups. So,
Oh, no.
Hi. Oh, she's so cute.
let me pass her over. Like I said, I wasn't lying about the haircut.
No, it's twinsies. It's twinsies. Oh my God. She's adorable. She's absolutely adorable.
I'll pass her over to Mom.
That's awesome. That's man, I remember when Grace was that small. I could just hold her in my hand, you know.
I know that the other part is she's like 15 plus pounds now, and you 13 and a half here with my wife.
Yeah, close enough. It's close enough to 15.
But you're carrying her around. Like I carried her around for about 45 minutes, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then transferred to my left, and I'm like, ow.
Just wait till she's 7 or 8, and she's like, Daddy, can I get a piggyback ride? Like, fuck, get off my back. My back hurts. God damn it.
Stop creaking. You did touch upon, right, the there's other pieces of that puzzle. One is right, like the packaging, and I've kind of essentially said, what can I do to insulate my supply chain for one? How can I either cut down on those logistics costs or counteract them in a way? So I've been playing around, and what I'm going to show now is that these are pretty rough prototypes, but and I have to be fair, I don't know anybody else who's doing this right now. That doesn't mean that nobody else is doing this, but I am playing around with doing 3D printed boxes for my
oh wow,
There you go.
So this is the Rioja 10 count. I don't know how well it can actually be.
No, that's showing up pretty good. So
it's going to keep the blend information there. Then keeping in mind with having retailers in mind, this is a prototype color, but the actual color for the Blanc, the white, is going to be like this, meant to imitate wood.
okay.
And it looks really, really pretty. And then you can ignore the red because we just printed it to make sure that it fits. But the other adjustment is that you can actually put both the Toro and the Robusto in here by simply adding a little block, and you can have two in one go.
Nice. So let me ask you this about that 3D printing. How much, like, conservatively, right? Like, just kind of ballpark it. How much money is that going to save you on packaging?
So the way I set out to do this little test was I looked at all the inventory that I have in the boxes and what I typically need. So I was about ready to put another order for the boxes, which is about 1,000 boxes when I do, maybe more. So that's enough for about 10,000 cigars. And again, it's mixed. Usually I do between 12 and 14 to 1,500 boxes. That's all mixed between the different various sizes. So portion goes in bundles, portion goes in boxes. It should save me enough that I probably don't have to raise prices the following year at all. It should. Plus, it takes out a big issue, which is supply chain. Because I bought the 3D printers and I have them in the warehouse,
Right.
so I can print on demand, and more importantly, like the two main things were supply chain, making sure that I'm not waiting 3-4 months for boxes. Because it is ultimately just tied up capital, right? And you got to put that order in, especially if it's 3-4 weeks lead time before your cigars are ready. So this way, I can kind of plan that out in a much better way. Plus, I don't have to pay for box shipping, right? That weight adds up, especially in logistics. So the fact that I can redo these and then offer customization for some of my shops. Hey, I don't have the room, or I want it differently. I want it faced the other way. Something that we can do like relatively easy. So I think that's the right move. I'm still planning it. I haven't fully committed to it, but I'm liking it more and more every day. And these are all iterations, so it's not yet done. But I'm liking it so far. And you might see them pop up over the next 2 months, give or take, with the. I'll put together a nice press release with pictures and everything.
They look super sharp, and that's a very smart way to do it, right? Eliminates that logistical nightmare of waiting on the boxes, the weight, all of that. I mean, Vlada, that's clever.
There's a sustainability piece here too. Not that I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna
save the planet, save the trees.
Yeah, it's not that. What do we do with cigar boxes? Like, let's be honest, we just chuck them away.
That's it.
It's unless you're Padron, which does probably the greatest thing ever. They repair them. Like, I can't do that by myself. If you are paying, $100+ for this box of 10 in a shop, I can't, in good conscience, send this to a retailer with a box that's dented or damaged or, not representative of what I do and what the brand stands for, with like selective by choice. And then you get a damaged box and you're like, selective by choice? Really? You selected this? So I can't do that. So this is like the way to, how can I be kind of more sustainable? Like, this is all the PLA that's used in here is biodegradable, which is pretty cool. So if anybody ends up checking these, like, they can actually degrade and like fall apart.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Like I said, I think it's very smart on your part to do that. And it's so simple. I feel dumb for not having thought of it. And I'm going to imagine there's going to be other people in the industry that are like, shit, that is really smart. Why didn't we think of that?
I'm sure there's other people that may have already started doing it or are thinking about doing it or exploring it. Like, I'm sure I'm not trailblazing here. The QR codes that are present in some of the Rioja or the BDX boxes, like, that wasn't groundbreaking. There's plenty of people that have put QR codes there, and you scan it and it gives you a PDF, right, text sheet. But I don't think anybody's done a video where it goes, hi, yeah, I actually think I'm wearing this exact thing in that video. And I get it, right? At PCA, people are like, oh my God, he looks like he's about to steal the moon. And like, what are we doing tonight, Pinky? Ha ha ha. But yeah, I get it. But nobody has really done that. And if you take a QR code, scan it, and my mug pops up and be like, hi, thank you for your interest in SOMM Cigars. Like, this is what you can expect. And it's less than a minute. It's engaging. It's interesting. It's cool. It's personalized. And I will probably tell a better story than most people that might not be familiar.
I mean, we talk about that all the time. Like, B&M's, it's incumbent on lounges and cigar retailers to tell the story for you, right? And if they're not telling the story for you, like, you're not selling cigars. Cigar consumers connect with a story, and they connect with a brand, and they connect with the individuals behind the brands, right? Like, I truly believe that in my heart. And if you can't get a lounge that you're in to tell that story in a way that's engaging and gets the customer engaged and excited and hyped for your product, your cigars are going to sit there on the shelf. So this is a way around that. This is a way of, yeah, I'm going to train you guys. Like, go do it. Like, thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys carrying it. Oh, by the way, just have the customer just do the QR
Makes your life
code.
easier.
So much easier.
So
right?
I actually want to ask you guys a question here. One of the design ways that I'm playing around with this 3D printed stuff is I don't like it at all. I'm gonna lead off with that. It uses this same color, right? This wooden color, but the actual box is the actual lid is going to be this color. Well, the lighting doesn't do it justice, but it's this scarlet red, relatively pretty with a deep, beautiful engraving. And just as I was testing it out, I put the lid on top of that base box. And in the space of 30 odd minutes, we had 5 or 6 people walk in, and every single person was like, "What's that? That looks cool." Meanwhile, and I'm like, "This is horrible. Like the colors clash. I don't like it." But it's so eye-catching that everybody looks at it. And then I think of a different brand that has gone for a rebrand about maybe not 15 years ago, but maybe it has been 15 years ago, where they went from super restrained to like color-coded. The label covers 3/4 of the cigar, and you can't miss it anywhere on the shelf.
Yep.
And, I don't know. What do you guys think? What is the right move here?
I mean, I have steamrolled Tim this entire episode, much like I steamrolled Nick. So I'll let Tim answer first, and I'll give you my opinion. Tim, go for it.
Are you talking like just the colors, or
Just the color on the box, right? So this would be
right?
Essentially, it would be this, except it would be this color, right? So it would be this tan color, similar to wood, with a top lid that is like this. It's a scarlet red, but I realize that with the yellow lighting here, it probably doesn't do it justice. But it's a scarlet red that you can easily like tell the difference that it pops up. Like there's a very big contrast between the two. And when you walk into a shop or on a shelf and you see this, sea of brown, blues, reds, and maroons and various, golds, to have something that's very different. Actually, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to mention another brand, like what Aganorsa did with Supreme Leaf.
Yes.
Right? Like purple, orange, yellow. There's nothing in the humidor looks like it. And, they're proud of that cigar, and they should be. So when you see it, you're like, all right.
Yeah, I really like the idea, the concept of 3D printing. I don't have a 3D printer, but I know somebody who does, and they are now just habitually 3D printing anything that they can possibly think of. I've had 3D printed hard drive trays made for my computer, so I can fit more hard drives in there, and they work great. I was going to leave this a little bit for Clear the Air, the after show that we do where we talk about you behind your back. But he's found that, there's all these different filaments, and you got to look out for like the amount of heat that the 3D printed, whatever it is, it gets exposed to, water for some PLAs, some filaments and stuff like that. But I think it's a really cool idea, and I think if you walk into a humidor and you see that, it's a showstopper. I mean, you're gonna sit there, you're gonna check it out, you're gonna look at it. So I can't wait to see that on the shelves in any of my cigar lounges that I frequently visit.
Yeah, and let me actually answer the question. I think color wise, you were asking about the color. Vlada, I pay attention. I can actively listen.
Yeah, I can't see color, so.
Oh, that's right. You can't. You're fucking colorblind. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, that Tim was not the right guy to go to for that. But you know what? I gave you an opportunity to answer a question, Tim. And you did a good job. I think, and I mean this with all sincerity, I think that this industry as a whole, Vlada, takes itself way too seriously most of the time. And so when you walk into this humidor, a lot of these brands want to project luxury, and they want to be fancier than they really are, right? And you and I know a lot of the folks in the industry, and they're not fancy. They're not, there are some that are like, look, for example, we had Michael Herklotz on the show, right? And you're kind of like a mini Michael Herklotz, because the both of you are always super well dressed. But when you talk to both yourself and Michael Herklot, you guys are down to earth and you're a lot of fun. It's not this, upper crust. I'm the upper crust and I smoke, so I literally burn money. So when you walk into a humidor, I think anymore people want that pop of color. They want to see fun. And I'm going to bring up a brand. They're a sponsor, Lure Cigars. Their branding is so colorful and so much fun. You can't help but see it in the humidor. And when he's in a humidor, he's got basically these boxes that people can put the loose cigars in, and it's got lures, like fishing lures all over it. It's colorful and it's red and they're green and it is a pop of color in a sea of brown and blues and red, like you said. Like, it's just, everyone has kind of the same branding because they all want to project this, the fancy kind of thing, this luxurious. And I get it, right? But man, like, let's have some fun. I like that pop of color. I like that red with that tan, that woody kind of creamy off-white look. I think that would be amazing. And if that's what gets people to smoke, like if it were me, if that's what got people to smoke my cigars, Vlada, that is exactly what I would do.
All right. And the other thing is, if it doesn't work, I mean, it's super
Blame
easy
James.
to change out. No, it's super easy to change out. It's 3D printing. I don't need to order 100,000 boxes to try it out. I can literally make 20 of them, send them to shops and say, hey, can you guys tell me what people think?
Yeah. For the cost of, the filaments and the equipment, yep. It's super easy. It's super cost effective. It's environmentally friendly, and it gives you the ability. I mean, it gives you play. I mean, it really does. It gives you room to play with the colors and the schemes and see what works, and then go from there. Like I said, I feel stupid for not having thought of it before now. I'm glad you were doing. I don't know of anybody else in the industry that's doing it, Vlada. I think it's brilliant, and I think if you do that color, do it. Like, have some fun. I'm so tired of everybody being so fucking uptight in this industry. I really am, dude.
Yeah.
Like, let's all be real for a second, and just understand that we're not all. Some of us wear jeans and t-shirts, right? Like, I can't pull off what you wear, Vlada. Can't.
The turtleneck in Russian Mercenary doesn't work for you? All right.
No, not with this hair. If I had your haircut, 100%. Like,
you'd be the guy at Jurassic Park, be like, calling out for working for IT.
God damn it!
I'd be shooting the dinosaurs, but it doesn't.
Now I need a Panama hat. Now that's it. That's it. Fuck you both.
That's right.
Yeah. That's real nice. Let's end this on a better note than me in a fucking Panama hat and a white shirt, fucking Jurassic Island. Vlada, where do you see SOMM Cigars in 5 years?
So we hit a milestone at the end of last year, which is I ended up in about 100 stores, 106 if I'm not mistaken, which is a pretty big milestone, I think, for considering SOMM has been done as a brand standalone since January of last year, since last TP. So I think that's a pretty good response. 5 years from now, I'd like to add. Well, ideally, I'm sitting on a beach and sipping a Mai Tai, but
yeah.
In a more realistic note, I'd like to be entrenched throughout the States. Maybe have a couple of international partners by then as well. I have been targeting a couple of markets that are pretty high end, and rather than go into markets that I just want to be there, I'm going very targeted for the top upper echelon of the markets, and that's where I want to start. To repeat a quote I heard from someone unrelated to cigars, he goes, "I want to be in Whole Foods, not in Aldi." I'm like, okay. That was the very to the point. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. I'm going to borrow that for an indefinite amount of time. And then probably a couple of regular production lines. Maybe I'll add another factory to work with, perhaps something out of Nicaragua. It's something that's not a country I've produced in before. Costa Rica might be an interesting one as well. I love tobacco de Costa Rica stuff. And that might be an interesting one. And then maybe add a regular line or a limited edition named after my daughter. And that's about it.
There you go. That's
Plus, that way I can pay her and then do the raw fire and like all the other moves.
yes. I love it. I love
paid
it.
For trademark royalties.
Dude, and look, maybe you make that an annual release on her birthday. It's a limited annual release on her birthday every year.
Perfect. October 2nd launching, maybe not this year, but the following when she's of age.
Yeah. The SOMM Petra.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what you could do
there
is she grows, like you start with like a short Robusto or a Corona.
Oh,
and
wow.
She grows, like, she hits the tween years. Cool. Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't know.
It's actually not a bad idea, especially if you do it. I'd probably have to start in inches and then do it as like transform it into centimeters where it goes right so that it kind of follows up the progression.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could release a 2-inch cigar though. That's a
no, probably not. You might have to have like a starting point. And let's not get to the 660s and the 770s, please.
The 100-inch cigar.
Yeah, let's not.
Hey man, the En Fuego here, my local shop, has a 7x70 that they produce at their own factory. I think they sell probably 100 of them easily a month, if not more.
Wow.
I'll never understand that.
It's not my cup of tea, but I mean, it sells.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if it sells, it sells. Like, and the next time you're in there, tell them we said hey. We missed them last year at the trade show. We were going to try to meet up on that last day we were there, and for whatever reason, we just couldn't make that happen. But En Fuego, when you guys go, if you're ever in Vegas, go to En Fuego in Henderson. Like I haven't been to their new shop on the Strip. They've got a newer one like close to the Strip.
The one on Sahara it's great. It's newer, right? Like great parking, great selection. The guys are always phenomenal. So really, really good.
Yeah, I like to go to the one there in Henderson, and like that's my jam. Like,
if you guys are visiting Vegas, please let me know.
It's a good lounge.
You guys can reach out. Like, I'm happy to meet you there. Or I use that, I'm a member there, so I'm there pretty often.
Yeah, no, for sure. If we next time I'm in Vegas, I will definitely let you know. But Vlada Stojanov, SOMM Cigars, thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate your time, your expertise, your knowledge, and you're always a blast to talk to. So thank you so much, man.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for the advice. I'll send you a couple of pics of the.
All right,
how it looks.
Hang on just a second, Vlada. Just I'm going to put you backstage. Hang out just a second. But we do appreciate Vlada coming on. Tim, that's another one in the can. I'm used to just saying, "Hey, Nick, that's another one in the can," but it's Tim.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the whole time. Like, it's really my first one in the can.
It is really kind of your first one in the can, and
maybe half at the very beginning, half now. That makes one full can. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I don't know what any of that means, but Tim, I want to thank you for sitting in for Nick and hanging out and getting steamrolled. Just
my pleasure.
Kind of the way I steamroll Nick. I appreciate it. I also want to thank our sponsors for this episode. Smallbatchcigar.com, guys. Go to smallbatchcigar.com. It's coupon code Stogies, 10% off, bonus 5% reward points, always free shipping. I want to thank Lure Cigars, and I want to thank our newest sponsor, Mile Kentucky Herf. Look, Ashland, Kentucky, Fat Ash Cigar. Go to fatash.com. Get your tickets now, $225 early bird tickets. By the end of February, by March, it's going to be $250. Pick up that pit pass, preferred seating, lots of goodies. Like, lots of info's coming. Stay tuned. fatash.com. Pick up your tickets now, and we'll see you there May 9th and 10th, I believe is what it is. That's going to do it for us. Join us next week where we talk about Vlada behind his back. Tim brings myself and hopefully Nick back to the microphone. We'll talk about Vlada behind his back and discuss this episode. And then coming up on our March 1st episode, we've got Risty from JSK. It's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be a great conversation with him. I look forward to that. And then middle of March, we've got a very big guest for you. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm not. You're not going to know who this guest is until the 15th of March. And it's going to be fantastic. So guys, until then, till next time, stay smoky, friends.